Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. My name is Madison. I make video essays about trending topics and pop culture. I'm also a singer and a songwriter, so if you like that intro music, then go check out my music. Links are in the description. So today I want to talk about 2010's veganism. In the wake of the protein warriors, the protein propaganda that has propelled across the internet.
You know what? The best I ever felt, like literally the best I ever felt all throughout the day was when I was on the carnivore diet.
I'm just kidding. I don't think it's propaganda. Protein is important. But, you know, we are now living in a world where Kardashian branded protein popcorn is a thing. I literally came across protein gummy candy the other day in the corner store. Like, it's getting real. And so obviously the new kind of trend in food and nutrition, or even diet culture, is protein, right? And we've been kind of seeing this over the past few years with the rise of keto. And, you know, I've witnessed a woman devouring a stick of butter as an afternoon snack because, you know, health and wellness.
I was craving a quick pick-me-up while walking the streets of New York, so I picked up my favorite energy bar, a stick of butter. There's no feeling quite like biting into cold butter, SPF-free in the city.
And it really got me thinking, how did we get here as a society? How are we just accepting the consumption of raw meat and butter and no fiber as a diet and calling it healthy? Like, it's really fascinating, you know, how we can convince ourselves that a certain hyper-specific restrictive way of eating is like normal and healthy and actually better than just like eating like a normal person. And that brought me to veganism, specifically 2010's veganism online, because of course all trends, whether it's fashion or food, has a tendency to swing in opposite directions. You know, we go from one extreme to another. And so if we're looking at keto and thinking what came before it, it's that 2010s era of veganism. What's interesting about veganism, or just any sort of like extreme diet, is how well into that pendulum swing that I just mentioned when it comes to trends, because people love extreme solutions to get extreme results when it comes to physical changes in the body, like aesthetic changes. And so similar to keto, veganism also had this promise of extreme physical changes in the body. You eat this way, you'll lose fast and you'll have the perfect body, you'll be skinny, whatever. But I think both sides justify the extreme nature of it through health. Like, oh no, this is health. And veganism has an extra layer to it because it also involves ethics and empathy for animals and care for the environment. And it made this era of 2010's veganism online so hard to navigate and so intense, because for a while it felt like you couldn't say anything negative about it because, you know, this is the most ethical way to eat as a person. And if you think anything negative about veganism, then you're just like a selfish, animal-hating, anti-environmentalist who has no morals or ethics.
Elise slaps down this huge slab of factory farm tortured animal, and because she is a frugivore, not a carnivore, she starts off by salting the meat intensely to disguise a taste of decomposing flesh. She tries her best to be badass, but just ends up looking like a dumbass as she pulls some immature comical face and tries to make light of a very serious situation.
And so I wanted to, you know, be nostalgic and go back to this time and look at it from a different perspective now that we're a few years out of it, and see what we can learn from this era, right? Because at the end of the day, health balance is important. Social media can heavily influence how we see the world, how we treat ourselves, how we think, and what we put into our bodies even, or what we don't put into our bodies. And it's important to have discernment when it comes to those things. Whether it's being vegan or being keto or whatever it may be, you don't have to feel pressured into adopting a very specific lifestyle, especially if it doesn't work for you. And just because something has an aura of health or a basis, a foundation of health, doesn't mean that it will always be healthy for you. And any way of life, any sort of diet can be taken too far. And so maybe, you know, looking back at this era of veganism can remind us like, okay, it's really just about balance and like not stressing about it, because if you're doing something for your health and you're obsessed and stressed about it every day, then it kind of defeats the purpose of being healthy, right? Because stressing yourself out is not healthy, and that's not what it's for. So anyways, that was a long intro. I have a lot of thoughts about this topic, obviously, so let's just get into the video. If you're currently going through something, feeling off, or seeking professional help for mental health related issues, maybe tsiatry could be beneficial to you. Tsiatry is a psychiatric practice. That means they specialize in medication for mental illness. The most common conditions they treat are ADHD, anxiety, depression, and postpartum care. I know when you're struggling with mental health issues, whether it be ADHD or depression, it can be really hard to muster up the energy to find a provider, book an appointment, get to the appointment, etc. So this makes it a lot easier to find psychiatric care. Tsiatry does accept insurance, and they are in network for most major insurers. It is 100% online with flexible scheduling, so you can receive care from the comfort of your own home without worrying about commuting or long wait times. All you have to do is book online at a time that works best for your schedule. Again, tsiatry provides psychiatric help, meaning you can be prescribed medication if that applies to your particular situation. There's no monthly fees, and tsiatry has a high-quality, diverse group of psychiatrists you can choose from. There are over 600 psychiatrists you can choose from with a variety of specialties. Their providers have an average of 10 years of experience, so you can trust that you will be speaking to someone who is highly trained. So if you or someone you know is struggling with this and is looking for care, tsiatry could be really beneficial for you. So if you're interested, please check out tsiatry by clicking the link in my description or clicking the QR code. So I want to start with just the kind of main aspects, the pillars of 2010s veganism online, especially raw veganism. That's kind of the main focus here. Also, I should preface, this is not an anti-vegan video. I don't think being vegan is unhealthy. Like I just mentioned, any lifestyle can become unhealthy if you take it to an extreme. But what's so interesting about raw veganism that I want to mention first is the aesthetic aspect of it. It really was the perfect kind of lifestyle to be popularized online because of how appealing it looked. There's an article called My Foray into the Weird World of Mid-2010s Raw Vegan YouTube, where the author talks about being really attracted to creators like Fully Raw Christina because she made her food look so beautiful and colorful and appealing. The salads and the smoothies and this whole like digital nomad lifestyle, which was huge at this time. This was also during the saturation era of YouTube, I think, so I'm sure that tied into it as well. But veganism looks so kind of glamorous in a way, even though it kind of has that like crunchy, barefoot, like raw vibe to it. It still looked really aesthetically pleasing, and like raw meat on a cutting board doesn't look as aesthetically pleasing as an acai bowl, you know? Anyway, so the radiant visuals and seemingly effortless wellness appeal masked questionable science and made the diet seem aspirational. I definitely think the aspirational aspect of raw veganism was a huge part of its popularity because it seems kind of hard, especially if you're not used to being around a vegan lifestyle. It's like, oh my God, how do I achieve this like healthy, it's kind of like the original clean girl, you know? It's like, how do I achieve this kind of lifestyle that seems so pure and so grounded, but also does require I guess an aspect of discipline to only eat like a very specific group of foods and to be fully content with that and to not have cravings for food that is outside of this diet.
Oh, I never crave fast food or non-vegan food because there's so many vegan options.
Any non-vegan food that you miss a lot. I would never eat a non-vegan item again. It's something that I know was just a part of my past and I never want to be part of my future or my present ever again.
I'll get into this later, but there is this kind of like purity culture within this vegan community at this time, and I think the combination of this like difficult lifestyle shift and the effortlessness creates the perfect recipe for like a really like addictive obsession, because you have to be like, I'm just like this ethereal vegan queen who lives out of my van and has glowing skin and I'm perfect and beautiful and amazing and I don't even have to think about it. You know what I mean? But maybe I'm projecting. I feel like that's how I felt during this time because I also didn't know anything about nutrition or health. When I was observing these vegan YouTubers, I was just like, wow, What's it like? Must be cool. I can't relate. But anyways, moving on. A huge part of this era of veganism that I don't think we talk about enough is the pseudo-scientific health claims that fueled the appeal. And looking back, it's so obvious that this is like marketing, I guess. It's just a way to sell you on the lifestyle. But Fully Raw Christina, who I mentioned earlier, claimed that her eyes changed color after adopting a vegan diet. And obviously that's probably not true. A lot of medical professionals, a lot of experts were like, that's a baseless claim, girl. What are you talking about? But there were so many claims associated with veganism that it kind of just all blended into one big ball of like, going vegan will solve all of your problems. But this was a huge part of veganism at this time, was like these really dramatic narratives to sell people on it. Because at the end of the day, there is something to be sold here, because a lot of the people we're talking about are influencers. And so if they can sell you on this lifestyle, which they are portraying on their YouTube channel, the more money and the more views they get. But that's just how marketing works at the end of the day. They're not doing anything that hasn't been done before. I also forgot to mention that there will be discussion of like ED stuff. I mentioned diet culture earlier, so if that bothers you, you can just move on from this video. Like I said in the intro, there was a lot of promise for, I don't know what I can say on this website anymore, because I've said the WL phrase before and I've had videos literally demonetized for saying that. So if I say like weird workaround stuff to avoid certain words or phrases, just know like I'm just trying to stay monetized here. But there was a lot of rhetoric around like eating as much as you want but not gaining weight, and that was a huge selling point for veganism at the time. And I think when it comes to veganism and EDs, you can look at it from many different angles, because there's one angle where a lot of people have developed like a orthoblankia. Oh my god, orthoblankia. That's so, I hate that I have to do this. Oh my gosh. But people develop this obsession with eating clean and eating only healthy foods, and that becomes disordered and unhealthy. And then there's another angle where people have struggled with eating in the past, and they use veganism as a cover-up to still restrict what they're consuming, but using veganism as like a shield, because it's like under the guise of health, right? Or ethics. But then there's also the overconsumption part that I don't think people talk about enough, because usually when we talk about EDs, we talk about the ones where you're restricting how much you're consuming, but there's also I think a big like BINGE component to veganism, because you know, vegan YouTubers saying like, oh, you can eat 50 bananas in a day and it's fine and you won't gain weight. And at the end of the day, it's not about how calorically dense a food is, it's about how much you're consuming. And if you are consuming so much to the point that it doesn't feel good.
I found the high carb, low fat community, and like they're these like skinny, glowing, young, beautiful women and men that are just eating fruit and eating huge amounts of it, and they're losing weight and they're thriving. You know, their skin, all of their acne has gone away. They've declined in age 20 years. The miracle claims got to me. I believed in every single one of them, and I cared more about following this diet than anything else. That diet was so important to me that it consumed my thoughts. Like, I woke up and lived every single day just thinking about the meals that I was going to be eating, and that's the most focus I've ever put on food in my entire life, where I woke up and I would have these enormous breakfasts, lunches, and dinners. Like, I was eating more than I've ever eaten in my life and feeling so disgustingly full because I was eating huge meals that I had never eaten before. And I would eat to the point of feeling so full because I thought I was doing things right. And sometimes I'd even throw up because I was so full that I was like, I literally can't function until some of this food is out of me.
But anyways, the last, I think, major pillar of veganism in the 2010s was its decline. And I think it reached such a high peak, it was bound to just kind of crash and burn just as quickly. Obviously, there are plenty of people who are still vegan, but I'm really talking about the culture online around veganism, because so many people went vegan and just as many quit. veganism. And I think that speaks to the lack of sustainability when it comes to veganism, not because being vegan itself isn't sustainable, but because the online culture around it promoted a unrealistic and unsustainable way of life. And I think it's safe to say that not every person who went vegan, who was a YouTuber or influencer, was probably doing it for the right reasons. I think a lot of people wanted to do it because it was trendy, and then they realized like, oh, this is actually not for me and I don't want to do it, which is fine. Like, you're allowed to try out different lifestyles and diets and see like, okay, do I like this? Do I not like this? The amount of I'm no longer vegan videos that came out in the late 2010s was so fascinating. And it's unfortunate because a lot of people came out with a lot of health issues from veganism. And there's one creator who I think was like the queen of vegans, who I think led people down a dark path. And I'm sure you know who I'm talking about, but which is kind of scary to think about, because I think with all these influencers going vegan, they influence a lot of young people to go vegan without really understanding the health risks that are involved if you don't do it right. And people just were like, oh, I'm just gonna go vegan because my favorite YouTuber went vegan, without really understanding nutrition and how to care for their bodies and nourish their bodies properly. But aside from the health aspects, I think a big reason why so many people stopped being vegan low-key was due to the drama and the bullying that went on. Like, if you were a public-facing person online who was vegan, 9 times out of 10, you were going to get criticism for how you chose to vegan. And I think that's really fascinating. And it's such a huge part of, like, the vegan community online at this time. I mean, it was honestly up to par with, like, makeup YouTube. And it happened around the same time. So I guess, you know, that was the culture online on YouTube back then. But there was so much like nitpicking and drama and like, you can't sit with this kind of energy when it came to veganism. And so that brings me to the star of the show, Miss Freely the Banana Girl. She was the #1 vegan online on YouTube. She ran it like a tight ship, a banana boat even. Freely the Banana Girl was something else. I used to watch her videos, and I had like a love-hate relationship with her because I knew what she was doing was kind of messed up, but she was entertaining, and she got so much attention online. She was truly like mother vegan. It was crazy. So if you don't know who Freely the Banana Girl is, she was a Australian... Hey... Oh my god, I didn't know there was a stain on my shirt. That's so embarrassing. So, Freely the Banana Girl was a popular Australian vegan YouTuber known for her extreme raw food challenges. Like I mentioned, the like eating 50 bananas in a day, that was her. She was doing crazy stuff like that. But she was also really known for her like intense confrontational videos where she would react to other YouTubers' diets, whether they were vegan or not. Usually non-vegan though, I think. And she would just basically criticize people for what they ate. I will never forget, this is ingrained in my mind. Every time I crack an egg open, I hear Freely the Banana Girl's voice saying, "That's an egg period. You're eating an egg abortion."
But she has the hensies. Why does she have the menstruations? Like, seriously, Remy, look, you know, having unfertilized reproductive cycle of a chicken, that's what eggs are, is not going to be good for your weight. And please, can we not forget the baby chicks? The baby male chicks that are ground up alive every time.
She was successful because she kind of did rage bait before we knew what rage bait was. But yeah, she would criticize people, like if you had acne, it was because you weren't vegan, or you're gaining weight because you're not a vegan. And of course, when your entire career is about calling people out and being super confrontational, you're going to be met with some pushback from these said creators. A couple of these creators being Blogilates and Kaylee Itsigns. I think that's how you pronounce her name. Blogilates tweeted like, "I'm not trying to sue her" or something, but she freely did get some of her videos taken down due to copyright from Blogilates. So there's definitely a lot of drama going on between her and those two creators. But Kayla did try to sue Freely for inflammatory claims from Freely, because Freely also accused her of not eating enough calories and was saying that she was promoting EDs. I think one of her biggest feuds had to be the one between her and Tana Mojo, who was only 17 at the time, which I think is really funny and also like kind of weird looking back. But yes, this grown woman was picking a fight with Tana Mojo. I mean, she was basically doing what she does with every creator, you know, criticizing them and their diet. Tana retaliated and decided to do what many other creators wouldn't, which is actually fight back and push against Freely and what she was saying. And so they went back and forth, and it created this whole internet drama that resulted in hashtag Tana challenges. At the end of the day, whether it was for her own popularity, her own money, her own fame, or just being really passionate about veganism and spreading the word, she was engaging in, she was and we're familiar with it now, but back then I don't think we were really having conversations about rage bait. And creating all this drama was like the perfect advertisement for veganism, or for her Raw Till for vegan cookbook. I don't know. You decide. But it's kind of ironic because, again, veganism is rooted in ethics and morality, and there's so much kind of purity associated with veganism that you would think someone who cares about the animals and cares about the environment and cares about the well-being of people and their health would be more softer or empathetic or just kinder, really. And she was like the exact opposite. She wasn't very kind, in my opinion. I think it's funny that she utilized this kind of rage bait marketing, because it did get really intense. Like, her fans would go to these YouTubers' pages and be like, watch Freely's video, and like, it was just really intense the way she would kind of target people, knowing that her fans would go and attack them and flood their comments because she made a video about them. And all of this kind of reminds me of the sort of culture we're seeing online today, where we justify bullying, harassing, nitpicking for the sake of like a morally righteous cause, like it's okay to say these inflammatory things and to go after someone online because there is a moral justification behind it, This era of veganism online really proves that it's not about what you say, but how you make people feel, right? And so if you have such strong conviction, you can convince people of literally anything, whether it's rooted in fact or not. And a lot of these, claims with veganism and health and stuff were not rooted in fact. But if you stand 10 toes down and you are passionate and have conviction, you can tell people that your eye color changed because you only ate fruits and vegetables for 2 years, Raw fruits and vegetables, to be specific. And I think the reason why people let Freely be this authoritative figure in the vegan community online was because she was so passionate and so deliberate with her content and so confident in going after people. And it made people think, oh, well, she must know what she's talking about, especially because, she was, she had a very fit looking body, and so it's like, well, if she eats like this and she looks like that, she must be right. If she's confident enough to get online and completely tear this person's diet apart, she must know something. And people did genuinely treat her like that, not just her fans but other YouTubers. Like, even though she criticized Jenna Marbles for gaining weight after quitting veganism, she still was making collabs with Jenna Marbles and other YouTubers, huge YouTubers, because she was seen as like the ultimate vegan goddess, And I think at this time it was hard to argue with someone like Freely or just veganism in general, because again, it was rooted in such strong ethics and morals that if you were like, I don't know about this Freely girl, or I don't know about this internet version of veganism, you are a bad person for questioning it, because it's like, oh, so you don't care about the animals then? So you don't care about the environment? You don't care about your health, I think Jenna Marbles even apologized after being criticized by Freely because she felt bad because she wanted to, be a good vegan and do things the right way. And all that being said, I want to talk a bit about the purity culture associated with veganism, because it goes way back, and veganism has evolved a lot and has gone through a lot of like highs and lows when it comes to extreme boundaries and judgment. And there have been so many kind of iterations of veganism and different definitions of it, and it seems like it kind of means something different to everybody. And I think that's really interesting, and probably why there's so much drama in the vegan community, at least at this time, because everyone can't agree on like one definition of it. Anyway, so The earliest like concept of veganism can be traced back to ancient Indian cultures. I'm talking like 1500 to 500 BCE. Greek philosophers talked about vegetarianism and the ethics around it. It just wasn't called veganism. It was like a form of vegetarianism. It wasn't until 1944 when Donald Watson invented the term vegan. But even in the 1700s, veganism or vegetarianism was almost like a form of celibacy and was present in a lot of religious spaces. The Ephrata cloister, a strict religious sect founded in 1732 in Pennsylvania, advocated for vegetarianism as well as celibacy. The 18th century utilitarian philosopher Jeremy Bentham believed that animal suffering was just as serious as human suffering and likened the idea of human superiority to racism. Another example of vegetarianism showing up in religious spaces that honestly feel kind of cult-like is in 1847 with the first vegetarian society. The first vegetarian society was formed in 1847 in England. The inventor of graham crackers co-founded the American Vegetarian Society. Graham was a Presbyterian minister, and his followers, called Grahamites, obeyed his instructions for a virtuous life: vegetarianism, temperance, abstinence, and frequent bathing. So I think it's safe to say that the cultish behavior with veganism, or vegetarianism in this case, goes way back, and it didn't just start with vegan YouTube in the 2010s. But when we get into veganism specifically and its invention in the 1940s with Donald Watson, he actually had a lot more of a like laid back perspective on veganism compared to today and how it's evolved. Although he did believe that it was cruel to eat animals, he did describe it as a diet rather than this like all-encompassing way of life. There's a really good video on YouTube about this by Jeff Nelson called "You're Not Vegan," where he talks about the vegan community and how it's evolved and the history of it. And he talks about how Donald Watson was really more of a health-based vegan rather than an animal rights vegan. And originally, animal rights wasn't really a huge component of the vegan diet. He really just created the word vegan to separate people who were vegetarian, who ate eggs and dairy, versus people who didn't. And that just ended up carrying on and turned into a vegan society, which was originally started off as a newsletter where he talked about this diet. And it was kind of great timing for the launch of veganism because a year prior, 40% of Britain's dairy cows had tuberculosis. So he kind of marketed veganism as like a healthier diet to protect you from illnesses like tuberculosis at the time. And it wasn't until 1946, 2 years after the Vegan Society had been created and the term vegan was coined, that animal activists started to infiltrate the vegan movement and kind of branded it as this animal rights movement. Leslie Cross being the leader of the pack with this. Leslie Cross actually became a board member of the Vegan Society and essentially took over and gave veganism a full rebrand. Donald Watson actually ended up being completely pushed out because he wasn't the right kind of vegan, as Jeff Nelson puts it in his YouTube video. And Leslie Cross made it a point that if animal rights wasn't the reason for going vegan, then you were not a real vegan. And I think that's where that major divide comes in, because I think too, like the original Donald Watson standards, if you were eating a vegan diet, but maybe you wore leather or used products created by a company that also makes non-vegan products, you're still vegan. Like, it's not that complicated. But once you get into this kind of like Leslie Cross era, then things get a little more complicated and nitpicky. And that kind of philosophy went on into, the 2010s veganism that we're talking about. In Jeff Nelson's video, he even mentioned some YouTube drama with Carly Bible and how she came out as being a vegan, and so many people criticized her, saying she's not really a vegan because she uses non-cruelty-free makeup and wears leather. And he calls these people ego vegans. He talks about how, you know, this isn't really the point of veganism and it's not really helping the cause to nitpick people and to be like, you're not a real vegan because you don't do X, Y, and Z things perfectly. Which kind of reminds me of like social media left-wing people and how people who may be on your side are still put in this box of like enemy because they are not perfectly aligned with how you view the world and how things should be. And it's unfortunate because I think veganism could have such a better reputation and the vegan community could influence people to be vegan and stay vegan for a long time if there were better tactics to do so. Bullying is not a great tactic to get people to stick with something. But, you know, with all this pressure for purity, I think that honestly creates a perfect storm when it comes to ED behavior, because not only do you have people who are using veganism to mask their poor relationship with food, but it also, I think, creates so much pressure around being pure and being a good person that people get so obsessive with it to a point where it's just not healthy anymore. Sort of creates this mindset, this schema that if I eat super clean and purely vegan, then I will be a good person. I will be good. I will be worthy, you know, and if I fall off, if I make a mistake, if I eat honey by accident or even on purpose, God forbid, then I am a bad person. Although I know people are so intense about protein, I do feel like the narrative has changed where people are more concerned about like balanced macros. You know, it's not just about only fiber or only protein. It's about building a plate that satisfies all of your nutritional needs, such as carbs, fat, fiber, etc. And that was a huge issue with the vegan community at the time. It was like there was just no fats in the diet, and that would result in a loss of period because women especially need fats for hormonal health. And Freely the Banana Girl was on this internet claiming that she didn't have a period and she was so happy and so relieved, and that's why you should go vegan, because if you are a raw vegan, you will get rid of your period and all of your problems will be solved. Like, isn't that insane? That's crazy. Like, 15-year-old girls are watching this like, yes, I should only eat oranges, cantaloupe, and bananas and I will lose my period and be skinny. Like, oh my God. Oh my God. Listen up. Come closer, okay? Open your ears. If your diet causes you to lose your period, that diet is not for you, and you need to stop doing that immediately and see a doctor. That is one of the worst things you can do to yourself. Worst things you can do to your body is to mess up your hormones so bad that you don't have a period. That's not safe. That's not healthy. I feel like the 2010s era of veganism was just so damaging because of how cultish it was and the fact that so many people were like, this completely wrecked my relationship with food. So many young people were saying Freely's videos completely changed the way I ate and how I viewed food, and I was only eating fruits, and it messed with my health.
Raise your hand if you've ever been personally victimized by Freely the Banana Girl. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, please scroll on and I hope you have a lovely day. This is a safe space for all the girls that grew up in their formative teenage years watching Freely the Banana Girl, because why did I just find my old diary? Freely, you're actually going to jail. Like, you're actually going to jail. Oh my gosh. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I feel like so many teenage girl eating disorders from that time period, like 2016-17 era, could be traced back to Freely the Banana Girl. Like, I used to watch her religiously. Like, guys, I was trying to convince my parents to become vegan because some banana lady said so. Like, literally 14-year-old me was like, yes, so I eat that dinner. Like, banana lady told me I could only have a blueberry a day. Like, reading this is actually so sad. I think I like repressed these memories. But guys, I remember the only reason that I stopped watching her is because she started beefing with all my faves. Like, I remember she started having beef with like Tana Mojo, and I was like, yeah, you crossed the boundary now.
And the culture around it is so intense. Like, it kind of, I think raw veganism is kind of like a gateway drug into more conspiratorial beliefs. Like, I made a video about the like Make America Healthy Again movement, and I think raw veganism was like a precursor to that, because there were a lot of raw vegans who, they're very earthy, crunchy, didn't believe in vaccines, didn't believe in certain things that bled into politics and things like that. You can watch that video for more information. Although now, because we're in a different era, it's not raw veganism that people care about as much. It's more just like organic, maybe more animal based, things like that, raw milk, etc. Around like, I want to say like 2019 was when we really started to see an influx of YouTubers coming out saying, I'm no longer vegan. One example being Ravana or Yovana Mendoza, who announced after 6 years of a strict raw vegan diet that she had developed health issues such as period loss, which we talked about, anemia, and SIBO, which forced her to incorporate animal products like fish and eggs, and this led to a huge backlash, which is a common theme with a lot of these videos because the vegan community at the time was so cult-like and so aggressive towards people who were vegan. If you came out, which was like a huge step, if you came out and said you were no longer vegan, you were basically sacrificing yourself to the mob. A lot of people came out saying like I had really horrible health issues and I had no choice but to stop being vegan because as soon as I ate meat and animal products again, the life came back into my body, the glow to my skin returned, the life in my eyes was present again. And it's like, okay, yeah, well, clearly veganism wasn't for you. At least the like freely the banana girl era iteration of veganism where you're only eating raw vegetables. Like, I think there's a way to be a vegan and be healthy, of course, because so many people do it and can sustain it for years and years, or if not their whole lives, and be fine. But just, I don't think people need to be raw vegan. If I'm gonna be honest, like raw vegan is like a little bit too much, I think. And again, if I'm gonna be honest, I think some influencers did it because it was trendy and because everyone else was doing it and it was kind of just the thing to do, and they're like, this isn't for me, I don't want to do it anymore, which again, fair enough. But a lot of the people who were like really hardcore vegans, who their whole channel was about being vegan, or a big part of it was being vegan, ended up stepping away from it because of their health issues. I think the most interesting example of this was, I think it was Raw Alignment. She was a vegan YouTuber and she stopped being vegan and ended up doing a like 30-day carnivore challenge, which I think is so fascinating. And I'm not like diagnosing her with anything. Like, I really don't know much about her or her diet. That is kind of an example of like that restrict cycle that happens when you have an ED, where you heavily restrict certain foods and eventually your body craves it so much that you stop restricting and you just go like balls to the wall in the opposite direction, extreme. But that also tells you like, balance is important. It's not that carnivore or veganism is better than the other. Like, what if we just like met in the middle? I don't know. I'm not one of those people who thinks your body doesn't need fiber. Like, that's insane to me. But yeah, I feel like collectively as a society, we're going through a binge and restrict cycle where we restricted and we were all vegan for a couple years and thought that was the way and that's the best way to be. And now we're in this like protein obsessed carnivore diet, liver king era. And it's just like, what did we not learn from the last one? You know what I mean? And I think the mass exodus of veganism and the YouTube space really touches on something important, which is you really shouldn't put so much of your identity into a diet. It can be really restrictive and dangerous to put so much of your personality and who you are into a diet, into the kinds of foods you eat, because your body is always changing and may require different things throughout time. And especially with veganism, because again, there's so much morality and like ethics tied to it, your audience will feel betrayed or like you're fake or you were lying the whole time once you decide to change. But it's normal for people to change. Okay, listen, I was vegetarian for like 5 years, which is a pretty long time to be not eating meat, at least for me. And I can't imagine what it'd be like if that was like my entire personality online and people followed me because I was a vegetarian and then all of a sudden I'm not. And like everyone hates me or thinks less of me because of that, And it's even worse because so many people developed health issues because of it and still were met with criticism. Some of these videos where people were explaining why they weren't vegan were embedded with so much shame and like sadness because they couldn't stick to it and their body just couldn't handle being vegan. Probably a result of this. I think when I was a vegetarian, I thought the ultimate goal is to be vegan, which I never reached, which is fine. Like, I'm kind of glad I didn't, to be honest. But I don't think veganism is bad or like, you know, it's a horrible thing or bad for you. It's just important to be aware of your nutrition. And it's scary to me that so many young girls were going vegan without really understanding how to do it properly or doing it for body image reasons so they could restrict more, things like that. And let me know what you think. Did you have a vegan journey at some point? Are you still vegan? Are you no longer vegan? Thoughts on Afrilly the Banana Girl? Thoughts on protein? Maybe I should do a video on that. I know, I think Drew Gooden made a video about protein and stuff. I was kind of reluctant because I had that idea, like maybe I should talk about that. But I do love a good protein moment. Like I definitely prioritize protein. So I'm not like anti-protein or whatever. So yeah, thank you for watching. And I'll see you in the next video.